points, poorest regions and epidemics epicenters. International organizations carry out their activities in parts of the world where they are critical for people. They unite countries and continents, save millions of lives and solve global problems. Watch more on this in Kazakhstan International Vectors. A new era of cooperation. The EU countries are planning joint investment projects. For comparison, earlier funds were attracted from a limited number of sources. Now this number is rapidly growing. Free trade zones are a new trend of the world economy. Currently, the entire world is a set of particular regional associations. Export access. This is one of the principal goals for many Kazakhstani manufacturers. Only in Almaty, about 70 companies started selling their goods abroad. To increase exports, special workgroups have been established in Kazakhstan for the promotion of domestic products in foreign countries. It is also worth mentioning that Kazakhstani goods are not so much represented around the world. Synthetic foamed rubber is one of the examples. In 2012, its production was set going in Almaty. There are only 6 companies like this throughout the world, says Olesya Zubovich. Has the second truck with raw materials arrived? Yes, it has. It is a modern insulation material used in ventilation, conditioners, cold and hot water systems, as well as in the oil and gas industry. The demand for the material is high in Kazakhstan and abroad due to the high consumption rate. What problems do exporters face and how do the countries of the customs union cooperate with each other in nowadays? Coming up next. Strong export performance, adequate standard of living and stable economic situation is what the majority of countries are now striving for. However, surviving in harsh economic conditions of the modern world is easier when you work together, experts say. So 94 integration associations are currently functioning throughout the world. One of them is the Eurasian Economic Union. The majority of economic unions are regional. Among them are the Free Trade Zone, the Customs Union, the Common Market and the Currency Union. The Eurasian Economic Union is an international integrated economic association. It consists of 5 states: Kazakhstan, Russia, Belarus, Armenia and Kyrgyzstan. The headquarters of the organization is located in Moscow, Russia. The principal governing body of the Union is the Supreme Eurasian Economic Council, represented by presidents of the member countries. They make key decisions which become compulsory for all the member states. There are also 2 more governing bodies of the association. The Eurasian Economic Commission is the managing body of the EEU. It deals with matters which it finds to be of high priority. The organization's main goal is close economic cooperation. It is expected to improve competitive ability of countries on the global scene and well-being of people in all the countries. The mission of the Eurasian Economic Union is to make all the members of the Eurasian Union the key economic and macroeconomic regions. It can be explained by the fact that in the modern world the center of economic gravity is moving to the east. The EEU implies a free circulation of goods, services, capital and labor force. For this purpose, the countries have already started the implementation of several joint programs. For example, this year they plan to consider a project on the establishment of common gas, oil and petrochemicals markets. These projects allow various industries to cooperate with each other. For instance, it can be cooperation between 5 countries which benefit from integration within the framework of mass production and entering the global market. Along with that, the EEU introduces the Unified Customs Nomenclature and Common Customs Schedule. Open borders between member countries allow them to facilitate verification procedures at the boundaries and increase commodity circulation within the Union. The sales volume between Russia and the EU countries from 2009 to 2014 rose 1.5 times. Between Kazakhstan and Belarus, it rose 1.8 times. Between Kazakhstan and the EU countries, 1.5 times. Between Kazakhstan and Armenia, 1.6 times. And between Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, 2.1 times. The formation of a common service market is another priority area of the EU. It is expected to improve the business climate in the member countries and raise additional funds. After the creation of these freedoms, presently we don't need to register our enterprises in Russia, Belarus or Kyrgyzstan in order to start rendering some services in their territories. It will be enough to register them in a country where they carry out their core activity. This plant manufactures about 350 types of goods. Olesya Zubovich says that 10% of the overall production is enough to satisfy the demands of the domestic market. The rest of the goods are sold to Russia, Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan. According to Olesya, the EU has simplified the process of export of goods abroad. However, there are some matters pending. Our plant faced a number of problems. The most serious of them was collecting exports documentation. In other words, in order to dispatch a truck abroad, it should be completely loaded. Only after that, the documentation is collected. We had to do everything within 3 days. Another major problem is heavy expenses for motor and railroad transport. What is a free trade zone and what do the EU countries benefit from? Coming up next. For the first time, the idea about founding the Eurasian Union was announced in 1994 by President of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev. At that time, the first integration project was developed. 5 years later, the heads of Kazakhstan, Russia and Belarus signed the agreement on the establishment of the Customs Union. This Customs Union evolved into the more substantial union, the Eurasian Economic Union. The Eurasian Economic Union began its work on January 1, 2015. The organization consists of Russia, Belarus and Kazakhstan. On January 2nd, Armenia and in August Kyrgyzstan joined the organization. Therefore, the Union member countries account for 15% of the world oil reserves and 1/5 of the world natural gas reserves. Industry is one of the priority areas of the EU. Its member states are increasing their own output in order to export more goods beyond the Union, for example to the markets of China or Southeast Asia. In 2014, the industrial production output of the EU countries exceeded $1 trillion. The foreign trade volume reached about $880 billion, which made up 3.7% of the world export. Thanks to this union, the countries will be increasing their export volume, first of all to China. The import volumes will be also growing as well. This August, Kyrgyzstan joined the EU. This step has opened for the country new prospects for cooperation with other states and organizations, economists say. For instance, Japan has already granted a $120 million credit to Kyrgyzstan for the reconstruction of the airport and repairs of roads. Apart from that, the implementation of other projects between the union members is underway. For instance, Kyrgyzstan, in cooperation with Kazakhstani entrepreneurs, is now developing several deposits. Enterprises of Kazakhstan are invited for the development of coal deposits. In addition, there are joint projects on supplying with Kazakhstani coal of a heat station in Bishkek. According to the Ministry of Economy of Kyrgyzstan, the countries joining to the EU furthered the development of the domestic textile and sewing industries. It has attracted Turkish investors who are now planning to open a major enterprise in the territory of Kyrgyzstan. Kyrgyzstan exports to Russia 68% of cotton, 64% of tobacco and 30% of radiators. It exports to Russia 100% of electricity, 9,900 of dairy products, 73% of vegetables and fruits, 74% of live animals, 98% of clothes and 44% of glass. To Belarus, it exports 27% of radiators. Other states also notice the beneficial effect of such unions as the EEU. Thus, Tajikistan is now considering the issue of becoming a member of the Eurasian Economic Union. There is also a chance that Azerbaijan will also join the EEU. The expansion of the Union's geography is expected to afford ground for additional possibilities and benefits. First of all, it is because any entrepreneur, for example from Kazakhstan, can easily establish his firm in Russia, Belarus, Armenia and Kyrgyzstan. The same things can do businessmen from these countries in Kazakhstan. The amount of investment is also increasing. According to Alessia Zubovich, her enterprise carried out thorough preparations before entering the foreign market. Everything began from staff retraining. Thus, specialists from Italy were invited to teach local workers the new unique production technology. Along with that, a number of certificates were needed for export commodities. After drawing up all the documents and overcoming difficulties, the enterprise reached a new level of development. We increased exports approximately by 60%. After that, our plant started working 24 hours a day. Nevertheless, the plant administration is not going to rest on its laurels. Its plans include expanding the exports geography and increasing the output and the range of goods. Our prospects are strengthening the relationship on the Kazakhstani market and approaching the international market. In 2016, we plan to enter the markets of Armenia, Mongolia, China and Belarus. A free trade zone implies lifting of customs duties, taxes and other fees, as well as strict limitation of sold goods during mutual trade. Presently, more and more countries conclude such agreements. A free trade zone can expand and cover new territories basing on some agreements. It can be a reduction or abolition of duties on particular products or some other preferences related to the regulatory approval system. This year, the EEU signed the agreement on the establishment of a free trade zone with Vietnam. Specialists expect that it will increase the turnover between the countries from $4 to $10 billion. This data was published by the Eurasian Economic Committee. Many countries conclude regional agreements, and it has become a common thing when highly industrialized countries open free trade zones with less developed states. For example, Singapore, Malaysia and Cambodia established such a zone. The EU prospects also include initiating the trade cooperation with the European Union. The benefit of such actions is based on the economic growth of European countries, in particular the growth in exports, increase in production and creation of workplaces. The Eurasian Economic Union should become a bridge between the East and the West, between Asia and Europe. From the very beginning, this union should be introducing innovative technologies in order to attract the transnational business and creating conditions for competitive goods and services.
Transnational business.
Any international union has its own emblem. However, there is one symbol which unites all the countries and people throughout the world. This is a dove of peace. Its history originates from the Congress of Peace Supporters in Prague and Paris in the middle of the 20th century. At that time, the symbol of the conference was a dove with a small olive branch painted by Pablo Picasso.